For years, the most requested Pokemon game from fans all over were Sinnoh remakes. The past 3 sets of remakes, besides Let's Go, were some of the most highly regarded games in the franchise because of how much justice they did the originals, which were classics for many people. On the fateful day of February 27th, 2021, which was Pokemon Day of that year, long-awaited remakes of Sinnoh were announced, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, as well as a different kind of game which was going to be an open-world type style Pokemon Legends Arceus, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're talking about the Sinnoh remakes. And people were mad right from the start, which this would continue for the game's entire lifespan. First problem was the art style. The games tried to capture the same top-down style that the originals had, and it didn't look the best, especially with the undersaturated colors and lighting and the chibi art style, which many fans did not like. It made everything feel really unnatural. And this was the first time in series history that these games were not being developed by Game Freak, and instead ILCA, the people who created Pokemon Home. The game obviously looked early in development, which was understandable because it wouldn't release for 9 months until November of that year. But a positive of this trailer was that it seemed as if we would be getting the Platinum Regional Dex rather than the Diamond and Pearl one. And the Diamond and Pearl Regional Dex is infamous for being the worst in the series, with an unbalanced number of Pokemon from each type, with the famous criticism of Diamond and Pearl only having 2 fire types, Infernape and Rapidash. So if you didn't pick Infernape, your only option for a fire type was Rapidash, which is obviously not the best option. These games were more remakes of Platinum than Diamond and Pearl. These had potential to be some of the best in the series because of how highly praised Platinum is. It's one of the most replayable games and is widely regarded as one of, if not the best Pokemon games in the franchise. So there were pretty high expectations for Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. People have been asking for this forever. So were these remakes going to deliver? We wouldn't find out more about these games until August in a Pokemon Presents. This second trailer was a huge improvement on the first one in many ways. To start, the game looked a lot better visually. The colors and saturation were fixed, as well as the lighting, and the chibi art style, while still not looking the best, looked a lot better. I'm in the minority when I actually like the chibi art style and the colors in this game, and while they are not the best and my favorite in the series, I don't think they deserve the hate they get. Some notable features from the trailer were a improved contest format, which I still haven't done, character customization, which besides Let's Go, all the other remakes did not feature, following Pokemon, and the removal of HMs, instead using the Pokedex. Following Pokemon was implemented terribly in this game. They are not scaled to size, and they lag behind you, and are sometimes not even visible on screen because they are so slow. So I honestly wish they didn't even put it in this game because it is just done so horribly. The removal of HMs, however, is great. Sinnoh is sort of known for its over-reliance on HMs, having to use 5 HMs to do the Victory Road, which means you cannot solo run a Sinnoh game with a Pokemon because you cannot have more than 4 moves. So this was great. But the biggest part of the trailer, without a doubt, was the Grand Underground. This was the original Underground from Sinnoh, where you can build bases and mine, even though the bases were kind of nerfed because you can only add statues to boost certain types, but they added a new mechanic called Pokemon Hideaways. These were pockets in the Underground that were type-themed with different Pokemon in it, and this looked awesome. It made the Underground seem a lot more enticing with more reasons to go down there other than just looking for fossils, and cool ways to find Pokemon, and the Hideaways just looked great in general. The Underground also showed a bunch of Platinum Pokemon as well as the rest of the trailer having things like Honchkrow or Yanmega. So it seemed even more likely that the Platinum Dex would be used other than the Diamond and Pearl Dex. Other news also had the map being shown, and there was only a Battle Tower and not a Battle Frontier, which I was okay with, because after ORAS, I wasn't assuming and hoping for a Battle Frontier because I kinda knew that it wasn't gonna happen. So then there were sporadic pieces of information until the game's release on November 19th of 2021, and that's when shit hit the fan. When Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl were released, they were met with reception. Not good reception by any means, but reception. They were the worst rated Pokemon games on Metacritic for about a year until Scarlet and Violet were released, which is stupid. Scarlet and Violet are leagues better. But Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl had a ton of problems. And before I go over them, I want to preface that a lot of them are because of fan expectations. A lot of people expected Platinum remakes and not Diamond and Pearl remakes, even though these games were constantly marketed as faithful to the original. So we were never going to get Platinum remakes. That was never going to happen. People had too high expectations. Why remake a game that is inferior to a much better version when you could have just ported or remade that with a bit more improvement? That is because Platinum didn't sell well. If you look at the records, all third version games sold pretty terribly compared to the others. I mean, obviously they still made a ton of money, but if you look at like the highs of something like Scarlet and Violet, they failed in comparison. Because after 2 years of playing the original, no one's going to want to buy another version of it, of a game they already played with minor improvements. It didn't make a lot of sense to people, which is totally understandable. Even though Platinum was one of the most highly regarded games in the series, people weren't going to want to do it again after 2 years of Diamond and Pearl, which I completely understand. So a lot of these problems are because of fans thinking they were going to get something, but did not. There are two categories I think these problems fit into. One that are problems with the original Diamond and Pearl that were rectified in Platinum, but were not in these games, and then problems with these games specifically. So let's get into them. If you're enjoying this video so far, it would help me out a ton if you liked and subscribed. I make tons of other great content, so go check that out and get down in the comments on what your thoughts of these games are. The first problem is the elephant in the room being the Pokedex. Now obviously, since I'm talking about it, they use the Diamond and Pearl Dex and not the Platinum one, but on paper this isn't that bad of a problem, and especially in context, because the Pokemon hideaways have Platinum exclusive Pokemon. Not all of them, but a good chunk of them, so you're able to use some of your favorites in Diamond and Pearl. Except you can't. A lot of Platinum evolutions require an item, such as a Razor Claw, and those are locked behind the post-game like they were in Diamond and Pearl. Why? I get, like I said earlier, these are Diamond and Pearl remakes, not Platinum ones, so they would keep a lot of features the same, but they already added a way to get Pokemon that you couldn't get in Diamond and Pearl prior to beating the League. Before beating the League, you can get them, so why not get their evolutions too? I'm not just going to want to use a Gligar to beat the League, I want to use a Gliscor, so why only give me half of it? Why can't I evolve it? It doesn't make any sense because it renders all these Pokemon completely useless. Like, yeah, your Platinum exclusives are there, but you can't really use them, or at least not to their fullest potential, so it doesn't make a lot of sense. And speaking of the League, let's talk about that for a second. This is, in my opinion, easily the hardest Pokemon League, but one of the hardest gauntlets in all of Pokemon, for no reason. There is such a random difficulty spike in between Volkner and here, it just makes absolutely no sense. All of the League members have strategic movesets, good held items, good EVs and IVs, and some of them even have hidden abilities. An example being Flint's minimizing baton passing Drifblim, who will minimize to +6, and the baton pass to his hidden ability Iron Fist Infernape. That is not fun to deal with, a +6 evasiveness hidden ability Infernape. And don't even get me started on Cynthia. Cynthia is, in my opinion, the second hardest battle in the franchise, behind Volo, who is by proxy just Cynthia because the majority of his team is Cynthia's Pokemon, and then 2 Giratina's. But Cynthia's team is brutal. Her Citrus Berry, Spiritomb, and Leftovers Gastrodon are tolerable. They're not easy by any means, but they are okay to deal with. Not as hard as her other Pokemon to me. But the other 4 is where things get serious. Yachi Berry, Roughtskin, Garchomp. Marvel Scale, Flame Orb, Milotic. Wise Glasses, Lucario, who's built as a special attacker, and Expert Belt, Roserade. What the hell? Why is it so strong? Why are they so strong? Especially Garchomp. Garchomp is always been a run ender, but even here, the amount of times I've seen Garchomp one-shot your Ice type because you use Ice Beam or something and it doesn't kill because of the berry is way too many to count. And especially, even if you want to bring in a Fairy type because you know about the berry, it's got Poison Jab, and it likely outspeeds because it's very fast because of the aforementioned EVs and IVs. So, this battle, if you don't know that this is coming, that you don't know that she has such a broken team, I find it very hard to believe that you beat this on your first try, because this battle is tough. Like, I think it's tougher than Ultra Necrozma if you don't know it's coming, because it's 6 Pokemon. Ultra Necrozma is strong, yeah, but it's just one. Like, if you have a dark type, even coincidentally, then you're probably fine. Like, if you have Incineroar. But here, it's brutal for absolutely no reason. I get if they were building up to it, like Rourke was normal as he is, but then maybe Crash Awake had some competitive Pokemon, and then by the time you get to Volcaner, he has a very solid built team, and then the league is just like a test of everything you've learned. I would be okay with that, but the fact that there is this difficulty spike docks off a ton of points on the game for me. Now let's get on to the game's various bugs, and trust me, there are a ton. Since release, the games have been patched multiple times, so now they aren't as bad, but at the beginning, it was rough. In Diamond and Pearl, if you didn't know, there was something called the Void glitch, where you were able to walk through walls and go to out-of-bounds areas to get to places out of sequence. Now, would you believe me if this remake of a game that is at least 15 years old kept that same glitch? Spoiler alert, it did, which makes no sense. This glitch was so prevalent in the early days of Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl that the any percent speedrun world record is 14 minutes and 31 seconds on a game in 2021 that had this problem when it was first released 15 something years ago, and they could have fixed it. They didn't. They kept it in. Like, that, why? That doesn't, there's so, I'm getting visibly angry, and you can hear me, I'm going off script when I talk like this, because I do have like these topics in the script, but this is just aggravating me going over this. There is no reason the Void glitch should be here. Why? It's so stupid. And there are other problems, such as soft locks, like in Veilstone, where you get stuck in between these two people, buggy online features, texture issues, skipping the snow point puzzle in the gym. But by far the most egregious, in my opinion, is you can skip the entire Pokemon League. If you want an in-depth way to do it, check out this video by Small Ant. I'll link it in the description, but it'll also be in the cards at the top right, where he goes more in depth of being able to do this by doing something he calls making sandwiches. But long story short, you're basically able to stack menus on top of each other and trick the game into thinking, like, you can go into the Elite Four, but the game thinks you're not in there, so you can like go to the other side and then start the cutscene, but it puts you through the door on the other end, so then you're on the other side of the Elite Four rooms. You can skip all of them, including Cynthia. That's how it takes 14 minutes to beat the game, which is so absurd and just stupid. And the last problem I'll talk about, which has been a mechanic for a while, is friendship. No, I'm not the biggest friendship guy. I don't think a lot of people are. It does add a bit more immersion into the game, but can make things a bit unfair in your favor, making battles a lot easier when, like, if you die and you live on one. I don't really like when that happens and there's no toggle for it. If there was like a yes or no option, then I would be okay. And then another thing is the permanent experience share. That has been a thing since Let's Go. I do like the new modern experience share of getting all your Pokemon levels. I think it's a lot better than just a held item, and I know there's a lot of people who agree with me, disagree with me, whatever, but it should not be permanent. No one should be forced to do it. You should be able to turn it off, but I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl were destined to fail from the start. Besides the bugs and everything like that, they were released not even 2 months before a much more anticipated game in Pokemon Legends Arceus, the Breath of the Wild Pokemon game, which wasn't really, but it was still a lot more exciting than what this was. Yeah, it was going to be fun to revisit Sinnoh in a normal way, rather than the open world that Legends Arceus would offer, but it wasn't the same. This is my least favorite Pokemon game for all the reasons I stated earlier, and is definitely the worst way to play through Sinnoh. Who knew a remake would be not the definitive way? At least something like Oras I feel like is a contender. Well, personally I think Emerald is the best way to play through a Hoenn game. Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire are definitely another solid choice. But if I hear someone say Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl are the best way to play through Sinnoh, I'm not going to respect them at all. Platinum remains the best way to play through this, but it has definitely hindered my reputation and thoughts of Sinnoh. I always liked it, I thought it was good, but now, especially with Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, it makes me see its problems and how Game Freak refused to rectify them in this remake. If you all enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. It helps me out a ton. And if you enjoyed, I'll see you in the next one.